Galen Bacharier covers politics for the Des Moines Register and joins us now. Galen, must have been quite the day to be there.
Yeah, no doubt.
We'll start. Yeah, I can imagine. Look, this was supposed to be a forum. It turned into a little bit more. It seemed to sort of like advocacy questions by Tucker Carlson. Put that aside. Put that aside for a second. What I'm curious about is of the Trump supporters that were there, because about 44% or so of Iowa caucus goers say that they're going to caucus for Donald Trump. How many of those seem to be out there looking for somebody else, or at least willing to be open to somebody else?
Yeah, it's interesting. In Iowa, you have a sort of unique state here where folks, even if they are almost certainly locked in for Trump, part of the culture of a lot of these circles in Iowa is going to these events, right? This is the Family Leaders Annual Summit. This is a high-profile cattle call event. You're going to get the chance to see a lot of national politicians. In this case, you also get to see a popular media commentator. That was a chance that a lot of these folks were not going to pass up. And so certainly in this crowd, you almost certainly had some folks who are completely locked in for Trump. You had some folks who are almost certainly locked in for Trump, but are willing to explore otherwise. And you have some folks who are completely done with Trump and they're looking for an alternative. And so I think that makes sense for the attendance today.
Yeah, New York Times tear about Trump Iowa snubs. The former president snubbed one influential Iowa leader, attacked another, testing his immunity to traditional political pitfalls in the crucial state. Obviously, the picture of your governor there, Donald Trump, is not very happy with right now. My question is this. The fact that Tucker was there and he was sort of skewering and belittling the entire Republican field, I thought was interesting. We know that Trump and Tucker Carlson are close. They seem to be politically aligned. In some ways, now that Tucker's gone from Fox, they seem to sort of need each other in one way or another. How much of this, as you saw it, was allowing Tucker Carlson to skewer the field? Trump doesn't show up, so Tucker doesn't look like he's playing favorites when he gives Trump softballs. And then Trump comes in on Tuesday for a town hall with the faithful and with Sean Hannity on Fox, and everybody can keep on playing the game.
I think it's hard to say for Tucker personally. I know that for a lot of these candidates, I think the lead up to this, given the last week of news, given Trump's issues with the governor here who's popular, given some questions arising about his support in Iowa, I think for a lot of these candidates, this was viewed as a moment to, all right, if we're going to start gaining momentum on the former president who still remains by far the front runner, this is the time that you're going to do it, right? This is the time to start to carve a lane. Evangelical is a part of that.
Yeah, what do we make, though? And look, you and I have covered a lot of political events. There's times that there are debates. There's times that there are, interviews one-on-one, and then there are these sort of candidate forums, which are normally pretty friendly events. You don't normally have the questioner really sort of skewering and advocating within the party apparatus for one candidate or another, one sort of nuanced position or another. What did the crowd make of sort of this very I'll be generous, pointed questioning?
It was really interesting. We saw throughout the day today that in some of these interviews, Tucker Carlson was receiving more applause and more support than a few of these candidates. And I think that makes sense given who he's established himself as kind of a heavyweight in that conservative media sphere, not afraid to give his own perspective, not afraid to not necessarily tip the scales, but certainly weigh in and shape that policy discussion. And I think you saw a lot of the supporters today respond to that.
Real quick, we put up how many events all these guys have had and ladies in Iowa. Ron DeSantis has had, I think, the most now, next to Vivek Ramaswamy and Asa Hutchinson. But in terms of the big candidates and where they are in the polls, Ron DeSantis has. How did the crowd react to him?
Yeah, a lot of these folks are still continue to be very interested in Governor DeSantis, right? The former president hasn't been here a lot. He's been here 3 times. He'll be here again on Tuesday. Ever since in the months that Governor DeSantis officially entered the race, I think in a lot of Republican circles, in a lot of dedicated conservative circles, there's a lot of intrigue here, right? This is someone who is billed as a rising conservative star, as someone who could possibly take down a former president en route to the nomination. I think there's a lot of interest in what he's done in Florida, and I think it's still early and folks really want to see what they have in him and if he says what they like to hear.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.